Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's webinar titled Telehealth Updates for 2022, brought to you by Webinar Planet. This webinar will be presented by industry expert Stephanie Thomas, and it will be recorded to purchase later in the form of DVD, transcript, flash drive, and digital download. If you wish to ask questions during the webinar, please type it in the question box and it will be later answered by the speaker during the Q&A session. Stephanie, welcome to the program. We are now ready to begin.
Good morning or afternoon, everyone. So glad to be here today to go over some telemedicine changes and updates, things that we should be watching for the new year, and just kind of watching for all the time. So I'm excited to go over this stuff with you, so let's jump into it. Our objectives today, first of all, I think it's important to talk about the history of telemedicine, kind of where we've come from with the payers and where we have evolved to now, and kind of what is on the horizon as far as what we know and what's been released so far with, as far as what the payers are saying and kind of the rumblings in the billing world. And then we'll go on to talking about the research as far as how to find new information. Obviously, it's changing all the time, so I'm going to go into some tips and tricks of how you can find information as far as, researching on your own or how to watch for the trends within your own practice and, making sure you're getting the proper information and updates as they come out rather than having to find out on the back end with denials and things like that. And then we're going to go into talking about the coding, the actual coding on your claims, and how to find out the information and get it right on your claims the first time. It's really important, obviously, to get correct claims out the door. So again, we don't have to worry about claims being denied and dealing with those denials and appeals. So we definitely want to talk about that. I will give you a few tips on the things that have changed that have caused a lot of headache for my clients. And so definitely want to make sure everybody's on the up and up with the few changes that I know of for sure that have caused problems. Then we'll talk about internal processes that I know of and have put into place with practices, as well as your own technology that you already have in your practices that we can use to your advantage. And then we'll talk about some denials and how to fix those things and how to appropriately work through those and how to obviously limit those in the future. Excuse me. Okay, so let's talk about the history of telemedicine. So obviously, before the pandemic, we had very few payers that were even willing to cover telemedicine, and if they did, they required us to use their certain portals, for their certain insurances with our patients, and it was kind of, a pain to work around, and, there was certain rules and regulations that we had to follow to even get paid for telemedicine as far as, seeing patients for care. And it was honestly for most of the clients that I serve and the, consulting work that I did, it was more of a hassle than it was worth because it seemed that the insurers were always finding a way to wiggle out of paying for telemedicine or finding a way to say it wasn't medically necessary or, whatever the case may be. As far as we've come with, the pandemic, and obviously we don't want patients coming into the office sick. We don't want, patients that are compromised coming into the office, to prevent them from getting sick. So it's easy to prove medical necessity now, but I do think it's really important that we remember some of the things that we learned from the history. And I'll talk a little bit about this throughout the presentation, but the documentation is one of the pieces that I am seeing providers or, practices in general, kind of limiting on and getting, obviously just getting in a habit of kind of, getting, I don't know if the word is complacent or whatever, but they're kind of just charting like normal as to, this patient was seen to be a telemedicine, and they kind of chart through like the patient is, within their office.